For centuries, humanity has painted a certain picture of Jesus Christ. We've seen portraits of him with olive skin, dark hair, and robes flowing in the wind. His image has been displayed in cathedrals, museums, and family homes across the world. But could it be that we've all been wrong? Could the Jesus we've come to imagine look completely different from what really walked the streets of Jerusalem over 2,000 years ago? There's an ancient letter said to be written by none other than Pontius Pilate himself, addressed to the Roman Emperor Tiberius. In this document, Pilate not only talks about the arrest, trial, and crucifixion of Jesus, but also gives a detailed, first-hand description of what Jesus actually looked like. And what you're about to hear may change the way you see Jesus forever. Before we go any further, take a moment right now to subscribe to my channel. Join us as we explore more powerful biblical mysteries and faith-inspiring discoveries like this one. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The Gospels tell us much about the teachings of Jesus, his compassion, his miracles, and of course, his sacrifice on the cross. But they leave out something most of us wonder about: his physical appearance. Was he tall? Was his skin light or dark? What did his voice sound like? The Bible doesn't give us these details directly. However, according to historical sources, there exists a document in which Pontius Pilate himself attempts to answer these questions. In his letter to the emperor, Pilate expresses great anxiety about the events unfolding in Judea, warning that something unprecedented had taken place. A moment he believed could change the course of the Roman Empire, and perhaps the entire world. Pilate's account begins with a confession. He describes Jerusalem as one of the most rebellious cities under Roman rule. Its people were restless, religious tensions were always high, and Pilate constantly feared uprisings. Pilate admits he didn't trust the religious leaders of Jerusalem. He wrote that the high priests would betray their own mothers for political gain. The people were divided, suspicious, and quick to revolt. He had only a small military force at his disposal, and even requests for reinforcements from Syria had been denied. Pilate was ruling over a powder keg, and Jesus of Nazareth was at the center of it all. One day, as Pilate passed through a public square, he noticed a young man speaking to a large crowd beneath a tree. This man spoke gently, calmly, and with great authority. It was Jesus. Pilate didn't stop Jesus from preaching. In fact, he secretly asked his assistant, an educated man fluent in Hebrew, to listen carefully to everything Jesus said. Later, the report stunned him. His secretary told Pilate that Jesus' words were unlike anything he had ever heard, not even from the philosophers of Rome or Greece. When someone asked Jesus whether it was lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, Jesus replied with the famous words, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's." This impressed Pilate so deeply that he decided not to interfere with Jesus. In fact, he allowed him total freedom to teach, preach, and gather his followers. Eventually, Pilate invited Jesus to the praetorium for a private conversation. As Jesus entered, Pilate writes that he felt something he had never experienced before. His body trembled, his feet felt glued to the ground, and his heart raced. Jesus, on the other hand, remained perfectly calm. According to Pilate, Jesus' presence was unlike that of any man he had ever met. His face radiated a mixture of peace and authority. He was humble, yet carried a strength that shook even the Roman governor. Pilate even compared him to a god, not one that Roman artists had sculpted, but something higher, purer, beyond human imagination. When Pilate warned Jesus to be careful, To moderate his words so as not to offend the religious leaders, Jesus responded with a statement that left Pilate speechless. "Ruler of the earth, your words are wise, but the will of my Father will be done. Before the rose of Sharon blooms again, the blood of the righteous will be shed." Pilate, worried for Jesus' safety, offered him protection, but Jesus calmly told him that no earthly refuge could prevent what was destined to happen. As the Passover approached, tensions escalated. The temple leaders bribed the crowds, and the streets filled with people demanding Jesus' death. They accused him of blasphemy, of threatening the temple, and of claiming to be the Son of God. Despite his personal belief that Jesus was innocent, Pilate found himself trapped. Herod, the Tetrarch of Galilee, washed his hands of the matter and sent Jesus back to Pilate, forcing him to make the final decision. Pilate tried everything to save Jesus. He offered to release him as part of the Passover tradition, but the crowd chose Barabbas instead, a known criminal. Pilate even reminded the people of their own laws, explaining that no man could be executed without a proper trial, fasting, and careful judgment. But the mob was beyond reason. Finally, Pilate washed his hands before the crowd, declaring, "I am innocent of this man's blood." But deep down, he knew that history would judge him. As Jesus was led away to be crucified, Pilate watched helplessly from his palace. He described the sky darkening unnaturally, black clouds covering Jerusalem, and the earth trembling beneath his feet. According to Pilate's letter, it felt as though the universe itself was groaning. Some in the crowd reported miracles. One man said he saw statues of Caesar weeping. Others spoke of visions of Jesus walking on water, commanding the wind, and raising the dead. Pilate admitted in his letter that he too was overcome by something he could not explain, a deep sorrow, a heavy burden on his soul. As the crucifixion unfolded, Pilate noted that Jerusalem was unusually quiet, as if all of nature was holding its breath. After Jesus' death, Joseph of Arimathea requested his body for burial, and Pilate granted it. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, Pilate received troubling news. The tomb was empty. Pilate had stationed guards at the tomb specifically to prevent Jesus' disciples from stealing the body. But when he questioned the soldiers, they told him something unbelievable. According to the guards, at the fourth watch of the night, a radiant light appeared over the tomb. It wasn't dawn, they were sure of that. The sky was still dark. They described hearing angelic singing and witnessing what appeared to be figures of the dead coming to life, wrapped in burial shrouds, but glowing with joy. The earth shook violently, and the soldiers fainted in fear. When they awoke, the stone was rolled away, and the tomb was empty. The priests tried to bribe the soldiers to say they had fallen asleep, and the disciples had stolen the body. But the guards knew what they had seen, and so did Pilate. Pilate's letter also gave a detailed description of Jesus' appearance, one that surprises many to this day. He wrote that Jesus had a fair complexion, not the typical skin tone of a Judean man. His hair was long, soft, and light brown, almost golden in certain light. It flowed over his shoulders in gentle waves. His eyes were described as deep, sometimes appearing light brown, other times almost blue, depending on how the light caught them. They were eyes full of compassion and wisdom, but also a firmness that seemed to see into the very soul of a person. His face was symmetrical and striking, not intimidating, but commanding respect. He wore a simple robe and tunic, always clean but never lavish. His beard was full and carefully kept. Jesus radiated humility, Pilate wrote, yet without losing the sense of divine authority. He was like no man Pilate had ever seen before or since. Pilate closed his letter to Emperor Tiberius by saying he had done everything in his power to act justly. But the events surrounding Jesus' death and the rumors of his resurrection left him questioning everything he thought he knew about life, death, and the gods. Could it be that Jesus was truly who he claimed to be? Even one of the Roman centurions at the cross declared, "Truly, this was the Son of God." Matthew 27:54. If you found this story fascinating, subscribe to the channel now. Click the video on your screen to discover more hidden truths, biblical mysteries, and faith-inspiring content you won't hear anywhere else.